Hey guys, so we're going to keep moving on in our transformation chapter this week, and we are going to be talking about translations. Translations are a little bit easier, I think, than reflections. So if you struggled a little bit with last week's lesson, this week will probably be better. But first, let's talk about what a translation is. So a translation is to vertically or horizontally slide a figure. You could do both in the same step, and it's going to depend on your directions. So we do have a symbolic form, which looks really confusing to begin with, but you'll see later it's actually kind of useful. And that is parentheses x, y is going to be transformed or translated using the directions of x plus h and y plus k, where h represents the horizontal shift and k represents the vertical shift. That doesn't make a lot of sense. It's mostly just to kind of tell you where you're going and how much you're going to shift. So that's why I added this stuff up at the top. So in your directions, if this x plus h is a plus, then that means that you're going to move your figure to the right however many units there would be in that blank. So if this were x plus 2, you would move it all 2 units to the right. If it were an x minus 2, you would do the same thing and you would move everything 2 units to the left. So plus on your x means right, minus means left. With the y's, which is going to be that second coordinate in your directions, if it's a plus, you move it up. If it's a minus, you move it down. Okay, so the best way to do this is to show you what I mean. So looking at this next figure, as you can see, I went ahead and drew all of these again today just to save a little bit of time. We're looking to move this rectangle according to these directions right here. So I have x plus 5 and y plus 7. So this x plus 5, this is going to mean we're going to move it right 5, and then we're going to move it up 7 from the original place, okay? So the way that I like to do this is 1 point at a time. It doesn't matter what you start with. I'm going to go ahead and start with Q. So I'm going to move it 5 to the right and then up 7, and then I'm going to place Q prime on that spot wherever I end up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then up 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is where Q prime will be, and that is the point -1, 6. Okay, so then we're going to do the same thing with R. So right 5, up 7. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's R prime. Okay, and hopefully the dots aren't confusing you. I'm just kind of trying to show you what I'm doing. Okay, same thing with S. Right 5, up 7. So there's S prime. And then we have T, which we're going to do the same thing. And I'll write down the rest of the points in a minute. Okay, and then we're going to connect our dots. Okay, so we have Q prime. R prime is going to be this spot 2, 8. S prime is 6, 2. And T prime is 3, 0. Okay, so there's a couple things I want to look at with you guys, because some of you guys struggled with the reflections with the points, and so there are easier ways to do this, especially if you are going to just be looking for the points. Okay, so you don't necessarily have to graph it first if you're just trying to find the new coordinates. So here's what you can do. So if we look at the x values, okay, so if we're looking at the x values, Q was originally -6. To get from -6 to -1, all I did was add 5 onto that number. Same thing with -3. -3 plus 5 gives me 2. 1 plus 5 gives me 6. -2 plus 5 gives me +3. Okay? So you're basically adding 5 onto your x values to get your new point. Same thing with the y's. I started with a -1. -1 plus 7 gives me 6. +1 plus 7 gives me 8. -5 plus 7 is going to give me 2, and then -7 plus 7 gives me 0. Okay, so you do not have to actually do the picture, and I think the last two, when we get to 5 and 6, instead of graphing it, I'm just going to walk you through that so that you know what to do later. Okay? So our next figure is already drawn. We're going to look at our directions. Okay, so they started throwing in some negatives for us. So if when we have a direction of x minus 3, this means that we are going to move our figure left 3, and then we still have the y plus 8, so that means we're going to move it up 8. So left 3, up 8 from its original spot. Okay, so C prime, C prime is going to be 1, 2, 3 to the left, then up 8. So there's C prime. D prime, same deal, left 3, up 8. There is D prime. And the last one is E prime. So left 1, 2, 3, up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, connect our dots. Sorry, I'll fix that. My pen kind of slipped on me. There we go. All right, so there's our new figure. Let's write down our points. So C prime is going to be at -1, 7. D prime is at 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like 4, 4. Yeah, okay, and then E prime is at 1, 2. All right, so same deal. If we look at our coordinates and our rules, to get from, and I'm only going to do this for 1 point this time, but to get from 2 to -1, we subtracted 3. Okay, so 2 minus 3 gives me this -1. With the y's, I have -1 plus 8, that gives me 7. Okay, same deal if I kept going and kept going and kept going, okay? So you can use that if you have to just find the points. Next one. Our rule is x plus 2, y minus 2. So we're going to go right 2 because that's a plus. And then we're going to go down 2. Okay, so we're going to move all of our points, right 2, and then down 2. So I'm going to start with K. So I'm going to go right 2, down 2. So this one's not moving quite as far. J, right 2, down 2. J prime will be right here. L prime, right 1, 2, down 2. There's L prime. And then right 2, down 2. There's M prime. So this one overlaps a little bit more than some of our others. And there's our new figure. Now we gotta plot our points. So let's do this using the rule first. That way we can just double check on our graph that it's correct. So if I do -4 plus 2, I should get -2. And if I do 7 minus 2, I should get 5 for J prime. And J prime is at -2, 5, so it all worked out. Same deal with K, so I should have 2, 6 for that one. And it does look like we have 2, 6 for K prime. For L prime, I should take -1 plus 2, which would give me a +1. 4 minus 2 would give me a 2. So I should have a point at 1, 2, which we do. And then M prime would be -5 plus 2, which is -3, and 3 minus 2, which is 1. And all of those check out with what we just graphed. All right, so let's do one more with the graphing, and then I'll show you what to do just with points. Okay, so rule, x minus 7, y minus 6. So we're going to be moving this one quite a bit. We're going to move it left 7 and down 6. All right, so let's just do this thing. So I'm going to definitely be counting, so hopefully it doesn't confuse you, but I want to make sure I end up in the right place. So we are going to go left 7, down 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, down 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Big difference. So there is W prime. All right. Same thing with x, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, down 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Of course they have to give us like these quadrilaterals with the ones we have to move a bunch. Okay, so same deal with Z. If I go left 7, I'm going to end up at the very edge of my graph, and then I'm going to go down 6, which would be here. So there's Z prime. And then we did X, Y, Z, so now we got to do Y. So we have, we did X, W, Z, so now we have to do Y. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. So I think that's the last one we're going to have to actually graph today, or the last one you're going to have to hear me count today, at least with graphing it. And then if we go through and fill out our points, W prime is -6, 1. Z prime is going to be -8, -4 it looks like. X prime is going to be -1, -1. And Y prime is going to be -3, -6. And again, it's always a good idea to just double check with your rule. So if I started with W and I did 1 minus 7, I will get -6, and 7 minus 6, I do get 1. And then I'm going to just double check the last point too. So -1 minus 7, I think I mixed, I did. I wrote those in the wrong spot. Sorry, guys. So the negative, oh man, I messed that all up. I'm so sorry. But I do not want to start this recording completely over, so let me flip-flop those. So X prime is the one that's -1, -1. Y prime is the one that's -3, -6. And C prime is -8, -4. I'm sorry about that. It's very early right now. I'm trying to make this before all my children get up, so I apologize. Okay, so now they're good. So -1 minus 7 would give me -8. 2 minus 6 would give me -4, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's why you should check your points right there, because even Mrs. Rogers messes things up sometimes. Okay, so last two on this page, I just want to go through the rules with you and how you would find your points. I'm going to try to write down as much as I can, but I don't know how much will fit. So looking at what we have here, we have our rule of, let me adjust this pen again, x minus 1, y minus 5. So from all of my x values, I'm going to subtract 1, and from all my y values, I'm going to subtract 5. Okay, so if I plug in my points to that, so for s, oh, I really didn't want that to be blue. Sorry. Okay, so s prime is going to be negative 4 minus 1, and then 2 minus 5. Okay, so I end up with negative 4 minus 1 is negative 5. 2 minus 5 is negative 3. So my point, I'm going to switch back to the smaller ink, negative 5, negative 3. Okay, same deal. I'm going to write on this graph, I think, for t prime would be 5 minus 1 and negative 1 minus 5. That one's a little confusing. Okay, so 5 minus 1 and negative 1 minus 5. So for t prime, we end up getting 5 minus 1 is 4. Negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6. Or, yeah, I wasn't sure if I wrote down the negative. And let me make sure I'm writing this in the correct spot. Okay, and then last one, u prime, I'm going to write down here at the bottom. So I would take negative 2 minus 1 and then negative 2 minus 5. And so we end up with, my pen shut off, negative 3, negative 7, if we were to graph it. Okay, so I just took my x values and y values, and I subtracted 1 from the x values, and I subtracted 5 from the y values. And so you really don't even have to graph it as long as you have the rule, which they have to give you the rule, unless they just put it into words, in which case you'd have to think about, okay, would I be subtracting or adding and so on. But I'm not sure that you're going to see that on the ones that you just have to write a point. So I don't want to spend a bunch of time talking about that right now, but if you have questions, definitely let me know. Okay, so last one, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to try to fit this all in here because now we have 4 points, so I'm going to switch to that smaller pen. So we have a prime. Our rule is x plus 4, y minus 1. So I'm going to do negative 3 plus 4. And then I'm going to do 6 minus 1. And I'm actually just going to write it down here, I think, because I don't have a lot of room. So negative 3 plus 4 is going to give me a positive 1. 6 minus 1 gives me 5. B prime, same deal, is going to be 0 plus 4, and then 7 minus 1. Okay, so 0 plus 4, 7 minus 1. So 0 plus 4 gives me 4, 7 minus 1 gives me 6. C prime is 1 plus 4, and 4 minus 1. Again, that one's kind of confusing. So 1 plus 4 gives us 5, 4 minus 1 gives us 3. And then the last one, D prime, is going to be negative 5 plus 4, and then 2 minus 1. So negative 5 plus 4 gives me a negative 1. 2 minus 1 gives me 1. Okay, so those are your final points. And I know I say that like so nonchalantly, but let me outline where we actually wrote our final answers for you guys. There you go. But the point is that with those reflections, it was a lot harder to do this. These translations are much easier to just find the points outright. Okay, so on the next page, we're actually only going to do the top two because the bottom four are actually something called composite functions or composite transformations. And we may or may not get around to this, so we may come back to this. If you are writing down the notes on one of the blank copies and you're filling them out as we go, I would not mark this out or do what I'm doing to it because we very well could come back to this if we have time. I'm just not sure how time is going to play out for us for the rest of the year. So if we get a chance, we are going to come back and talk about them, but I'm not sure yet. Okay, so because this is usually a separate section in our normal notes, so I'm not going to worry about that right now. That's usually something we do after we talk about all the different kinds of transformations. All right, so in this next one, or the next two, we are going to write the rule, and you do have some like that on IXL. Okay, so what we do to write the rule is basically track, and we only really need to track one point, is how far that point moved. Okay, so I am going to use, I'm going to use orange for this part, and I'm going to track E, because why not? You can pick any point that you want. I'm just choosing E just because. And I actually will use my line tool, I think. All right, so to get from E to E prime, it's a lot like how we find our slopes. I'm going to track it like this, okay? So I moved up 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we moved 7 to the right. Okay, so we moved up 4 and we moved right 7. So our horizontal shift, which is H, according to our rule, is going to be 7. And then our vertical shift, which they define as K, is going to be 4. So we're going to write our rule. And we did X, Y, and then an arrow. And then we're going to have X plus or minus a number. And then we're going to have Y plus or minus a number. So for X, we're going to focus on this. We went right 7, so it would be plus 7, because as long as we are moving right, it's positive. If it were moving left, it would be a minus. Since we moved up 4, the Y, the vertical shift, is going to be a plus 4. And that's it. That's all there is to writing it. So track one point, whatever point you want. Figure out how far you went to the left or right, how far you went up or down, and then you just write your rule. So the next one, same deal. I'm just going to track, it doesn't matter. I'm going to choose P, and I'm just choosing these, actually I might choose O, just because they're a little out of the way from each other. They're not around all those other points, and it's a little bit easier to see. So if I choose O, I would be moving 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right. So we went right 4. Oh, sorry, I reversed that. Make sure that you don't make the mistake that I just did. Be careful, because it's really easy to miss those primes because we're going from O to O prime. Okay, so always go from the original to the new, and I just missed that prime for whatever reason. So I'm actually moving, if I'm going from O to O prime, I'm going up 2, but then I'm moving left 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so once again, do as I say, not as I do. Okay, I make mistakes as well. So we are always going from original to the new figure. Or you could even write that as going from original to prime. All right. Be very careful with that, because that is one of the ways that people tend to mess up, because it's really easy to just get in a habit of doing it a certain way and then you just forget about your primes. So the same thing, x, y, we are moving to the left 4 this time. So we're going to do an x minus 4 since we moved left, and then the y's we went up 2, so it'll be a plus 2. Okay, so I apologize. I know that parts of that were a little bit rocky because I didn't pay attention to a couple little things, but they're all fixed, so this should all be correct. No worries. That being said, make sure you read all the directions about the assignment. I did change some of the requirements for IXL because last week, for whatever reason, some people got it done really quickly and some people it took a while. So because there's an extra topic or an extra skill this week, I did reduce it. In the future, I'll probably do something similar to that. So always make sure you check those directions. But other than that, if you have any questions, please let me know. Hopefully this week will be a little bit easier for you guys. But I will be available, email, remind, and I will answer your questions however I can. So I hope you guys are all doing well, and I will talk to you later.